How do you beat mass battlecruisers and do you just not let them get mass battlecruisers? Absolutely, Corby Natwell. Mass battlecruisers, like if you let someone get 30 battlecruisers, you done goofed real bad. If someone's got like 6 battlecruisers, Tempests do pretty good versus that. Stalkers do pretty good versus that. Corruptors do good versus that. Neuroparasite is amazing versus battlecruisers. Fungal growth is also good. So often you start with a fungal growth because that's the quickest thing to hit them with, especially if you come from a surprising angle. That stops them from teleporting away. And then you neuroparasite them all and use them to kill each other and that sort of stuff. So if you're a Terran player, Raven Cuck Matrix is very powerful against them. Interference Matrix, if you're a nerd who uses the nerd name for it. And yeah. Glitter Gizmo, thank you so much for the tier 1 sub. Oh, you just converted from a Twitch Prime to a tier 1. Thank you, Glitter Gizmo. Oh, you just gave me your true love and affection. The actual auto renewing sub rather than the has to hang out and manually click it. That means a lot. Thank you, Glitter Gizmo. Much love. All right, Gravin. So who sent this in? What league are they? And what did they have to say for us?
Okay, so this was kind of a recurring question. And it was sent by Too Easy, the Protoss player. And is about silver level. And their question is, what to do against Turtle?
Okay, and that was it? Just what to do against a turtling player?
Yeah, we have a couple of replays with kind of this question.
I saw another one in there. Someone was, so the other one was like Turtle Protoss, right? Whereas this one was like Turtle Terran?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, both silver, I think. Awesome. It's a good question. Yeah, this is like so common. I always see people asking this question, so it's pretty sweet. Anonymous Gifter is just throwing 5 subs out. Thank you so much. Holy shizzle fizzle. Welcome, Sapien Gaming, Avian, Sushi Sparkle, Call Me Mary, and Rainman. Thank you guys. Really appreciate the support. Awesome. All right. So I guess we'll hop into this in just a sec. So very quickly, before we do talk about that one, I might actually mark the previous 2 games. So the previous 2 games, what did we talk about in those? We talked about the first game it was like, let me just make sure. I'm going to try and record some of the useful little analyses we go over today, just so that it's easier for Helix and myself to throw it up on YouTube. So we talked about PVZ in that very first game. So let me create just a new little title here before we hop into this replay. 12th July. Anyone can submit a replay, by the way, guys. So !submit or !noob in chat, and you'll see the link there. So today's 12th July Newbie stream, and the very first VOD we had was PVZ. How do I stop? How to stop? Unscoutable Roach all in plus TVP. How the hell do I beat Storm? I guess, yeah, that should actually be the first part of that one, since that's what people want to know more. Awesome. All right. Mark that one down. Awesome. All right, guys, let's get in here and let's try and give some silver advice. Oh, actually, one last thing. I did just want to make sure. Awesome. Team Liquid Auto associates my stream with the Pig Daily. Fantastic. People in chat also very quickly want to know how many replays are in the list. So we've done the first 2, we're on the 3rd one. How many more have been submitted? There were like almost none at the start of today, so I imagine it's not too many.
Another, if we take off the 3 that we already done, there are other 10.
10 other replays. Yep, so anyone who gets their replays in soon will get theirs looked at for sure, basically. Even if you're asleep by that time, you can always check it out in the VOD as well. All my VODs are freely viewable, guys. I paywall nothing. The only thing I paywall is, as I was explaining at the start of the stream, the ability to lick my head at live events. You got to give me 500 cash, and it's a small lick on the side of the head, not on the front or the top of the head. So that's the only paywall that I throw up with my content. So you guys all need to chill out, enjoy the free content, and we want to be very, very thankful and slap some bacon down in the chat for people like that anonymous gifter who just threw us a wave of gifted subs. Thank you very much. A lick on the lips? Not on the lips, no. I'm not down with that banana stand. I actually have I have a lot of paranoia about germs. So if you do want, you can lick me on the teeth, but that's a $5 grand. That's a big one. Yeah, lick me on the teeth. That's Anyways, sorry guys, my bath's broken at the moment, so we can't do the old bathwater model of monetization. I've been working on it. I've been thinking maybe I can just like fill up a bathtub out back, like get like an old one off the street corner and just fill it up and just kind of, you know, yeah, sell some bathwater would be great. So anyway, how do I stop a turtling Terran, guys? So in other words, how do we not just die whilst headbutting into a bunch of siege tanks on the high ground? Now, what I really like about Too Easy here, guys, this is a silver level player, 39 APM. So in the grand scheme of all the hyper competitive people playing StarCraft, super slow in comparison. But what have we done? What am I so proud of right now? Too Easy has literally like basically followed all of my advice for players who are beginning on the ladder or basically bronze, silver, or kind of on the lower end of gold, or even the higher end of gold, you can do it, which is number one, focus on building a 2-base economy as quickly as possible. Number two, make a whole lot of stuff that fights. Number three, go kill your opponent with that fighting stuff. So basically, number one, build economy. Number two, turn economy into fighty and stabby things. Number three, kill opponent, give them stab. Just be like, hey buddy, do you want a hug? And then give them a good stab. Now, let's be nice and detailed first of all and say, well, one problem here is we could have used a few more probes on the natural. Would have been nice. A couple more probes would be nice, okay? Because that's only 11 workers. Okay, cool. We're going for a +1, but that's not going to be ready for this attack. So if we're always going for this attack, we might want to find a way to speed up our forge to make sure that upgrade is always ready so that we're doing a timing attack right as +1 finishes or something like that, right? Cool. Little adjustments. We've only got one Immortal, a Prism. We've got Charge. Actually, we've got +1 armor. So I'm totally okay with that then. Didn't realize we went +1 armor first. We went super fast upgrades. 5 gateways. So 5 gateways is not enough to support 2 mineral lines. If we're basically just going to be warping in zealots normally with this push, you want to have 2 full mineral lines and at least 7 gateways. So something we could work on there is our building placement. Notice this base. If we were like down here, we needed to defend our main base, we're going to be like snaking around our buildings or like snaking through these choke points. It's not just that. You can tell that Too Easy is struggling to place the buildings down because there's not enough space. Remember I talked about in that previous game. I talk about this with everyone, guys. Plat, Diamond, there's Masters players. You make life so hard for yourself if you don't place your buildings nicely. Now, as a Protoss player, one of the coolest things you can do is, first of all, put these pylons out in the open. You don't need to put them next to the Nexus. People are obsessed with putting it next to the Nexus because it becomes a fast warp-in pylon. The moment you build a warp gate next to it, it's going to be a fast warp-in pylon anyway. Put it out in the open, and what you can do is if you put gateways right up against it, like this top gateway, you can put another gateway on top of that. So if we have this pylon out in the open, you can go gateway, so you can go gateway, 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 gateway. And obviously those could be any other 3x3 structure. Forges, Robos, Twilights, Stargates, they're all the same size. A gateway, yes. My favorite, I love a gay time and I love a gateway, Zentist, yes. And trust me, you're going to be a much gayer, happier Protoss skipping your way to victory if you just give yourself more space, because there's nothing worse than this point going, oh, I need some more gateways. And you're like, where do I put them? Whereas I often get almost all of my production down on like one pylon here and like one pylon here in my main base. And I fit everything there and it's just methodical and it's lovely. Thank you, Everyhand. So with this attack, we are about to do what I call the blind man's headbutt, guys. And I love, like I said, I like the general frame of what Too Easy has done. I think it is so far above what we normally see in Silver League in terms of we got an economy up, we got an upgrade, we built an army, we're going to go do a push with that army. A couple of criticisms. First one is our warp prism's really far back and we've only really done one warp in before attacking. If we've spent all this time building up economy and production, why not spend maybe 2 or 3 rounds warping in zealots and then going for the attack, right? Don't you think, if you guys think about it, right? If you spent all game building upgrades, building economy, building production, you warp in 1 round of zealots and then you attack, you haven't really taken the time to let that economy and that tech turn into a big army. So every second that goes by, you're building more army, you are strengthening that army. Now, of course, on the other hand, you're giving your opponent more time to defend as well. There's always a bit of give and take here. We've got amazing chat comments. He's supply blocked. We know he's already got 3 pylons on the way, guys. He can wait He can wait 7 seconds and then warp in some units. It'll be fine. It's not a big deal. But what's more important here is we've got no idea what we're going into, right? You might say, oh, well, sometimes you might be giving them more time to get ready. They might be able to defend better if you give them time. How about we find out? How about as a general rule, what was I talking about in the previous game? You send a Marine further forward. What? Easy there, Peacekeeper. What the fuck? Chat's being weird, as usual. So anyway, we're just doing the blind man's headbutt. This is just insane. We had an observer. We have no idea what we're attacking into right now. We have no idea. Why would we not always wait for at least 2 warp-ins and as a structured part of the build, send the observer forward and check out what's happening? If we saw this here, I think there's so many cool ways we could dismantle this. So what we see is a relatively decent-sized pack of Marines, but very vulnerable, no upgrades, and a bunch of tanks, which are very vulnerable to Zealots and Immortals, but these 2 on the high ground, big bad boys. All right, guys, how do we break this nut? Let's not say, oh, let's pull back, but how do we break this nut? Who wants to be super fucking Gosu and shout out in chat? How would you assault this position? Rather than doing the blind man's headbutt, if you've scouted this before, you've warped in another round of Zealots, we need more gateways. God damn it. You guys are so stupid. Chat's so useless. Radner says drop Zealots on the high ground tanks. Radner has got it. So if you want to be super advanced, the sick way we do this is we go, ooh, let's pick up the Immortal, 2 Zealots in the Warp Prism, and then we're going to fly that in, and we're just going to tell that to drop on the siege tank at the same time, and as the prism gets to there, our army will be chilling over here, and we'll just A-move the army. And all we'll micro is that prism. We'll just tell it to unload units on top of the tanks, A-move, and we'll probably clear up this entire army and win the game. Unfortunately, we're going to see this. Those Zealots are getting ravaging going on. They are smashing those Marines. Unfortunately, we just did right-click on a unit. And this is the worst micro you guys have to break the habit of earlier rather than later. It's the I'm going to micro my unit syndrome. So micro is not bad, but micro must always be selective. It must always be focused on using the minimal number of units because we do not want to interrupt our units, okay? So what we're going to see here, if we go to the camera of Too Easy, and I'm going to remove my own webcam very quickly because you guys can see. If you're ever watching a replay, you can see what you have selected. So if you've been clicking on things, obviously it shows this. At any point, if you're not on this overlay, there's a little button, but if you're not, just press escape. And that will immediately put you back on, as long as you're on a player's camera, you can see what they have clicked on in real time, okay? So you can see the entire army is clicked on. Doesn't look like we're really using control groups except for the Warp Prism. Now there's been an attack move given, which is doing really good. The problem here becomes when we say, oh, we should try to kill the siege tank, and then we right click on it. Never do this. If you guys say, I should kill that siege tank, what's a good way to do that? We could box these units and right click them on it, or move them in deeper and then right click them on it. We could box some of these Zealots and click them on that siege tank. But you never, ever, ever focus fire with your entire control group. Unless it's like your whole army is Blinkstalkers and you're killing one Banshee that's harassing you or something. Unless you're just in a little harassment dealing situation, you never focus fire your entire army, ever. You're always better off simply attack moving and letting your units do what they do, okay? So let's see, you're gonna see the whole army is ravaging these Marines, and then watch what these Zealots do, because we're about to click on that tank. Let's leave those Marines all standing, and we're going to click on that tank. And the bigger a fight goes, the more this habit ruins you as a player. Because the more your units will all get stuck behind each other trying to focus fire one siege tank. And sometimes that unit's a bit inaccessible. This Immortal right now is trying to get that tank, and it's actually derping out on this little piece of terrain. This Immortal just did a little to and fro dance. Does get a shot off there. And now that Immortal does actually do a good job on attack move, starts killing this siege tank from the high ground. If we had another Zealot warp in or two, we'd absolutely finish this game off here and have completely won. That siege tank on the high ground, if it died, that would have been amazing. Unfortunately, guys, we only had 5 gateways, as we mentioned earlier. So We're only going to be able to warp in 5 zealots. If we had another 10, 12, 13 zealots, easy hold. Once again, we're manually clicking these zealots around. Would have been better off just A-moving them and trying to kill those marines and marauders. So this zealot being microed into the main, not really achieving anything. So we're going to keep warping in zealots, and we've actually traded not terribly, but because we didn't build any more economy, and now once the fight's kind of gone not as great as it could have, we're adding gateways. It's just a little bit too little too late. So I talked about a very advanced way of cracking this nut, dropping on the tank on the high ground. What if you're in Silver League, like our player here, Too Easy, and you don't immediately, it doesn't occur to you to break the high ground? Well, you know what? We saw actually that if we'd simply waited for a few more zealot warp-ins, even without dropping on the high ground, we'd probably still win this game with just a few more zealots, right? Being a bit more committed to that attack timing. That would have been huge. That would have been huge. But what's another way? If your opponent's very centered around the defense at the front, the most classic low micro way to make an attack very powerful as a Protoss, especially with the Charged Immortal, is when you go back and you're planning that first assault, send the Warp Prism into the bottom corner of the main. Warp in a whole round of 8 zealots there and just let them start ravaging the main base. And as your opponent reacts and tries to move down there to defend, then the front army swings in on that. And that way, even if one side of the fight goes bad, you're usually going to ravage an entire base of workers and put them in chaos. And that's the classic 1-2 punch, which is incredibly powerful as a Protoss player. So, yeah. So number 1, refine the build, get more gateways. Number 2, use the Observer always to check ahead of your army, and wait for at least one more zealot warp in before you go for the push. Number 3, be a little smarter with how we actually assault our opponent. Oh yeah, and of course the classic don't over micro. So that's about it really. In this case, we simply could have done a better attack. What we're doing now though is we keep just sending zealots in 5 at a time, and we're not really spending our money, right? So you've got to be real decisive. If your attack washes up, and you go with another round of zealots, well, remember, these have only been 5 gateway rounds. You know, they haven't really, it's like we're committing all of our focus to trying to kill our opponent and it didn't work. That's it. You know, our opponent was just set up a nice, pretty standard defensive position. We weren't able to break him with our attack. So we need to go in a different direction. You need to be flexible as a StarCraft player. You either go with one more round of zealots, it didn't work. Okay. And you either tap out of the game or you transition. And we haven't seen either of those. So what we're seeing here is Too Easy doesn't have a follow-up plan. So guys, either commit harder to the all-in attack, say I'm going all in, all my chips are on this move, and then just leave the game when it doesn't work out, after a few waves don't work. You know, you can try wave after wave and do it, or have a transition in mind. That could be dropping a Dark Templar shrine, continuing your upgrades, making a third base, and you're still making a zealot army, but rather than trying to break your opponent's natural, you're just going to make sure they don't get free expansions up. So you're going to leave a zealot at each third, and you're just going to chill out, and you're just going to build up, and then you're going to try and send in DTs as your next wave while massing zealots on 3 bases, and then you want to jump on them when they come out onto the map. So having some flexibility there is going to be huge. Our opponent does not have a lot of army, and we actually were very close to defeating our opponent. The problem is we didn't have a follow-up plan, and our first attack, which was relatively all in, just wasn't executed quite as well as it could have, and it kind of failed a little bit. So now we're going to go do some zealots in the main. But unfortunately, once again, we didn't A-move these zealots. We clicked them on that starport. Otherwise, they would have at least killed that tank automatically. And in general, guys, if you're going to warp in zealots, what you do is you click them here. What we accidentally did was click these zealots on the starport, so they went and attacked it. If you click them here, that says zealots move there, and they'll automatically aggro onto the SCVs, which is always the highest value target. Unfortunately, even though now we're not going to get the starport either because we changed our mind there, which is a real shame. And I think our stalkers headbutted the natural at the same time and went down. So the problem is we're not expanding our economy. The cool thing here, and in a game of StarCraft, especially if you play aggressive, your opponent right now, this Terran is reeling. Fung Franco has so much money, but he's like, oh god, this Protoss is all over me. An even cooler way to do this sort of attacks is literally warp in the zealots, don't even look at them, be dropping a third base, a fourth base, be chrono boosting probes the whole time, transition probes out of this base, grab half of them, move them down to here, go up into Mass Immortals and Psystorm or something like that, you know, go to the next stage, have a transition. But because we're stuck here on a one-track mind, we're going to just kind of keep on headbutting in, but we're not expanding behind it. We're essentially Our all-in failed several minutes earlier, and whilst we keep finding little bits of damage, we have so little behind it that it's not enough. So GG, a really good replay there, a great example, and I think a lot of really useful points there on how we as a silver Protoss player can break a turtling Terran. So I guess we'll look at that other turtle replay, Graben.
Oh, you want to look at that? Okay.
Just quickly, just so that's all right, we can opt out of this one. Oh, we got Dr. Ryan's replay. Dr. Ryan, are you still in chat, mate? Thank you so much, Too Easy, for the 500-bit cheer. No worries, mate. Thank you very much for submitting that, my friend. There was some, like I said, there was some really good things going on there in terms of, like, I think just building up 2 bases of economy and then hopping over and organizing things in terms of, I'm going to go do an attack. I'm going to punish my opponent. It's such a good way to put yourself in control of the game. So many things could have gone right from that. Dr. Ryan, we're going to look at your replay next after this current one, because I just wanted to keep looking at this. We're just getting stream avatars up so you guys have some toys to play with in chat. Thank you so much, Sailor Caladon with the Twitch Prime sub. Welcome to the Pigsty, mate. Fat Shorts with the 35 month before. Every Hand with the 3 month. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate all the support lately. It's been really overwhelming. Oh, no. What is that depot placement? Maybe he's building the production back here? He's just going to depot wall, I guess. Fair enough. And this is Terran versus Turtling Protoss, right?
No, actually, it's more of the same, I think, because it's from the point of view of Sam.
Okay, no worries.
Yep.
So was there any more details to the question? It was just like, oh, Turtling Terran, how do I break him?
Let me check. I don't know how to play against Turtling Terrans. I missed the scout to this replay. The opponent had an hidden base. Okay, now it's basically more of the same. Yeah.
Okay, cool. I mean, so first things first, Murloc got the fastest 3 depots to deny scouting of all time. Let's actually break this down, because this is kind of hilarious to a super experienced player, because it's like, it's obscene how much money the Terran has just spent to deny scouting. Like, this is such a handicap. Such a handicap. It's insane, guys. This is literally like a guy stepping into the ring and he spends the first 2 minutes punching himself in the jaw. That's what this Terran opening is. So Sam is going to have such a good start in comparison. So I believe this is also a silver replay, guys. So basically, if you scout this early every game as Sam, and you come in and they've walled off, first things first, you can actually attack move here with your probe, and there's a good chance one of these SCVs will float over onto this side, and you might get a kill on it. So I would have really liked us to attack move there. Let's see, did any of the SCVs float over? It looks like Merriok might have been a bit lucky. But either way, we might have been able to get in there at least even, right? You know, accidentally. But just leaving it behind the natural is totally fine. Now, if you see, so what's a simple marker, guys? If he's walled off this early at a minute, you don't need these depots. You don't need more than 1 depot. So normally, I always tell people, if someone's already walled off with a second depot by like a minute 10, they're doing a crazy 1 base play. But 3 depots? He can't even have a barracks or a command center. So we know, I mean, he could start a barracks, obviously, but like it's got to be epically delayed. We know that his build is just bad. So this, you know, you're in a race against someone, you know, with a massive limp at this point. So this is one of these things we can say, okay, mental note, 1 minute, 3 depot wall off. He's just behind, just follow my standard build. I want to point that out because normally I would never talk about specific timings and tells of buildings for low-level players. But this is such an absurdly fast depot wall against a player who normally scouts nice and early with that probe, which I love to see from Sam. I love players probe scouting. That like it's actually like a thing where we say, oh, let's actually understand that. Let's understand how bad this is and how much you don't. That's the same thing as if we as a Protoss player just built 3 pylons at the front of the base as our opening. That's a terrible opening. It delays our gateway, our nexus, everything. It's a really weak opening. So far, I love what Sam's doing. It looks like a pretty standard build order. Yeah, we could tighten up a few things with the exact timings here or there. Like this pylon's way too early. We didn't need a second pylon this fast, for instance, right? You only need 1 pylon at the start of the game. You can delay the second one till after you've gone gateway and cybercore. Cool. Other than that, let's take a look. Looks like this is kind of like my beginner Protoss opening. More or less. Since we're going fast robo though, we really should have a second gas. So that is one thing we're kind of missing. But let's take a look. So what do we do versus a turtling Terran? I just wanted to go over this one a bit quickly, just in the same vein as the previous replay, just to see. It looks like a similar sort of build up, right? We're getting up a good gateway count. We're gonna go charge a lot of mortal. That's what we always tell people, right? Go for the A move comp. No, he's going blink. Oh, okay. So here's a really good piece of advice, guys. You've got to remember that I recommend most Masters players don't actually make blink that much unless they really enjoy Stalkers, love the unit, and they want to get better at microing it. The Stalker is... Thinking of a good analogy. What's overrated, guys? It's like caviar. I'm sure it tastes really good, but you need to have refined taste. You need to be a fancy, goddamn, high APM crazy micro player. Blink Stalkers become the best unit in the game at that point. Until you're actually one of those fancy, yeah, like it's like a fancy wine where, you know, most of us can't tell the difference between a $3 bottle and a $300 bottle of wine, right? So unless you're a connoisseur of the Stalker, there's just no reason to make Blink. Stalkers, the mutas of Protoss, even worse. Katawa, even worse. Their raw stats aren't good. Their strength comes from your ability to use Blink exceptionally well. So I'm not going to hate it. If Sam loves Stalkers and actually tries to do a bit of micro, even if it's imperfect, I'm going to get behind it. But I would say in general, going for charge would be a better idea. Now, what's the big thing we saw that's better than that last game? Number one, Observer on the front, giving us a bit of pervy vision. I do prefer it would be down here so we could check that high ground because these tanks, there could be tanks up there as well, right? So we should have been down here, I think. But what's way better, guys? Tons of gateways. Isn't that awesome? We were very slow on getting this upgrade, but we've got 8 gateways, which is great. What's one thing we forgot, guys? To chain up 2 of the most important things in the game. As a Protoss player, it's add a ton more gateways and then add a ton more pylons. Sam did it the wrong way around. Sam queued up 3 pylons ahead of time saying, let's make sure I don't get supply blocked, then dropped a bunch of gateways and then forgot to build pylons for a long time. Instead, if you want to be really efficient, you want to be getting these gateways down as quickly as possible. You'd be like, Q4, 5 gateways, let's go, bam, bam, bam. And then you're like almost getting supply capped, and then you drop 5 pylons at once, 7 pylons at once, 10 pylons at once. You're never going to see a pro drop 10 pylons at once. They might do this where they almost get supply capped, and then they drop 3 pylons, and they drop another 2 20 seconds later. We have to say, I am a noob. And I'm this is not just you guys. I'm a noob too, guys. You will constantly, one of my strengths is my ability to cater towards my own tunnel vision. I know I'm going to tunnel vision on shit, so I want to over prepare. You will still see Zerg plays. Isn't it like a laser who at the moment you guys will see just build like, he's like, I'm at 80 supply. I need to build 14 overlords to make sure I never get supply blocked for the rest of this game. It used to be liquid rep back in the day. It's like, you're like, aren't you a pro player? Can't you just remember to build overlords on the fly? And then like, it's actually more efficient. And like, it's like, yeah, I mean, I could, or I could just make sure I don't get supply blocked. It's a pro player doing that. If we're in Silver League, there's nothing wrong with building, you know, okay, I'm about to be warping in 8 gateway units at a time. Do you guys know what 8 gateway units is? 2 supply each gateway. That's 16 supply. Every warp in is 2 pylons. So we should, okay, let's build 5 pylons. 5 pylons, 500 minerals. Just build them ahead of time, make sure you remember it. So whenever you plop down a whole lot of gateways, you're about to go for a big timing attack especially, but in general, anytime you just add a whole bunch of gateways, follow it up with your next 500 minerals, 4 or 5 pylons, just like that. Great little thing to link together. Make sure you never get supply blocked at the bad time. Now, the other thing here is we are really focusing on this attack. Now, Sam might not have that organized in Sam's head. Sam's saying to himself, we're going to do some poking with the Stalkers and see what we can do. But because there's no third base, because there's no forges, no other tech, that's not what we're doing. We're actually committing insanely hard. So what should we do? Always have a warp prism, or if you don't want to have the warp prism, have a forward pylon. You want to be able to warp in on the front. Otherwise, your attack is so much weaker. So if we'd gone for zealots and just warped in a bunch of zealots, we could be a connoisseur of the attack move command, and we would win the game. As it is though, oh, that's a planetary, lol. We're attacking with no direction and no organization. We're rallying units in a few at a time. We don't have a forward warp in point. We're not waiting for our upgrade. It's the worst upgrade, and we're making Stalkers the worst unit. Remember, guys, Stalkers a fancy connoisseur unit. We are not using them correctly at all. We should be making Zealots, maybe Adepts, but Zealots are the easiest one to use. But either one of those is better because they're not armored, so they don't take all the bonus damage from tanks and marauders, and they just deal more damage. As it is, once again, we're attacking with a half-baked attack, where half our units are back at home, and we still don't have a forward pylon or a warp prism. So this is not so much about how do I break a turtling Terran, because in both of these replays, we've seen someone who would die to a simple A move. But remember, what did we talk about in the last one? Prism in the main would be great, but he has a turret there. What if we flew in? That's why actually in pro level, rather than going to the corner of the main, you'll almost always go along the very bottom edge, and you'll come in here usually. This guy's got a turret behind his main as well. Holy shit. You probably wouldn't get the prism in this main unless you come in from that angle, funnily enough. But as we said before, if you got an observer there, we could go drop zealots up here, or the immortals on the high ground. There's 1,000 ways, but even just the zealot A move 2 minutes earlier, and that's what you want to focus on. The first attack being a decisive attack, not this, oh, should I poke in with 2 immortals and 5 stalkers, but it's, I'm going to warp in. I've spent the whole game building up 2 bases of economy. Let's turn that economy into the knife, and then let's put the knife in our opponent's chest. What we're doing is we've said, cool, I've started forging the knife, and then a bunch of the knife handles run off and it's just thrown itself at your opponent. And now your enemy knows you're there and he's like, it's a knife handle. It bounced off me. It didn't do anything. And then you're like, well, okay, here's the knife handle. Ah! It's fine. Here's the blade. You guys ever tried to stab someone with a knife handle without having a knife blade without having a handle on it? You cut yourself. That's what happened there. He just cut himself. So he says, okay, let's go back. Let's forge another handle. But unfortunately, we've got another handle. We've already ruined our blade in that previous act. Let's wait for a blade. Wait for a blade. No! And it's another handle that goes in. So you've got to make sure the handle and the knife go together, and that way you can do a nice organized attack. And that's the main thing here. I'm going to fast forward to the late game here. We'll turn off the sound for a sec. But basically, what we're seeing is just disorganized and uncommitted attacks. We're seeing poking in with kind of odd, random numbers of units. And yes, our opponent's defending very well, but there are 2 ways you play against someone who is turtling a lot. It is number 1, you either expand and take a ton of bases yourself and just get way ahead, because they're not going to push you anytime soon. And their army becomes so much weaker if they push out of the map. This Terran has no production. He has very few units. He's built a planetary fortress on his natural, which is already him sacrificing an immense amount of income in lost mules that could have been dropped if that was an orbital command. So if we'd simply taken 4 or 5 bases, we could literally have gone straight to carriers and 80 probes in this game and had the easiest win of all time. Alternatively, we could have said, what's the other way of playing against a turtling player? I am going to go as all in as I most possibly can. I'm going to hit a beautifully hard, committed timing attack where everything builds towards that. We hit hard, we hit decisively, and we hopefully break our opponent. And remember, guys, that's what would have worked this game. If we'd actually walked in 2-3 rounds of Zealots, had a Warp Prism, attacked the front, even without hitting the main at the same time, we would have broken this Avillo fan over here. No offense, Mariok, I'm sure you're a good human, but this is like literally this style of StarCraft is saying, please don't build a big economy, number 1. Number 2, please attack into my strongest point repeatedly. 3, please attack into my strongest point another 3 or 4 times. Because even after you sacrifice an army, you're probably still ahead of me. Because my build-up is so bad. I have 80 SCVs on 2 bases. Thankfully, a hidden base in the corner. That's another thing. You can always scout your corners. Can be kind of nice. But yeah, basically, we just didn't build up enough. Even after we pulled back and took a 4th, you can see here, we're kind of thinking about going Tempests, but it's an unplanned transition. So a really good thing is you can say, you know what, I like the economic follow-up. I'm going to map out a plan for next time. I play against this. I want to go mass air. And you kind of say, what do I need? Okay, I need to remember to go 3 Stargates straight away. I need to get 70 probes as quickly as possible, drop a 3rd and a 4th Nexus at the same time, which is just explosive to most people's brains. Because I've identified my opponent just has siege tanks and a planetary fortress, and they're sitting there and they're building 16 turrets and bunkers, and you can see their paranoia. Don't get sucked into playing their game plan and attacking into the strong point. Pull back and either go mega greedy or hit a very decisive all-in attack. But make sure you commit everything. Strategy is about leveraging your strength against your opponent's weakness. Now, because this is such a mechanical game, StarCraft, we don't need to care about actually finding their weakness. All we need to care about for the first few leagues is finding our own strength. And all that means is committing everything to one direction. So choose a direction, commit to it, execute. Decisive execution is how you win StarCraft. It's how you stay focused. Good luck, guys. Break those turtling bastards. Siege tanks so imba.